Hey gang, how are you all? Sunday afternoon here. A little segment I'll call Cramped in the Corner. Yeah, as you probably well, if you've seen my videos, you know that there ain't much room in my shed. So Cramped in the Corner, and it's all about in responses to a couple other videos and some requests on where do you live and would you like to stay there, where would you like to move to, blah 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 blah. Also, how did you get involved in motor cars, and yeah, so well, I'll start off with how did I get involved in motor cars. Well, as a very young child, when I say very young child, 5 years of age I think, I found it necessary to get into my dad's toolbox and pull things apart and see what made them tick. When I say made them tick, all my aunties and uncles and relatives used to send their broken clocks down to me. They all lived in Queensland, and they'd send them all to me, and I'd go in and into my dad's toolbox and use whatever I could find to open them up and just have a look inside them and see what made them tick. So I was always inquisitive as to what made things work, and I used to watch my dad, who as a mechanic he made a marvellous trumpet player. Let me say that. He was kind of all thumbs when it came down to fixing cars, although he did try, and he used to have a book. And while other people were reading Dr. Zeus and Run Spot Run, I was reading this other book, and it just so happens, and you'll see it's old. Here's the book right there. Now this is not the exact book, but this is, this is not that book, but this is the exact copy which I found a few years ago. It brought back awesome memories for me, and I'll just show you here. Look, if you can see how yellow these pages are, and I used to read this book at 5 years of age. This is what actually taught me the fundamentals of motoring, motor cars, how they worked. Everything from carburetors, differentials, gearboxes, cylinder heads, how it all worked, compressions, fuel ratios, electric systems, the whole how it all happens, all there, on and on and on. And I used to read it night after night after night, and I would read through, and at the end of when I reached this piece at the end here, right there, I'd start from the beginning again, and read through, and read through, and read through. It's awesome. So that's pretty much where I got my beginning of knowledge. And then when I became, I think I was about 8 years of age, my, I'll just take that out there for a sec. My sister's first husband, his father used to repair lawnmowers. Now I'm talking in, what are we talking? We'll be talking 1960, I suppose. When I was 8 and 60. No, it wouldn't have been. Would have been Let's see. Gee, I don't know. Never was good at maths. But anyway. So when I was 8, he gave me a lawnmower to try and reassemble. I'll just leave the page open here. He gave me a lawnmower which he was unable to repair, and so I got into Dad's toolbox, which was a very sparse toolbox. It really wasn't. There wasn't much in it. But I pulled the thing apart and ended up with a jar full of parts, and then proceeded to assemble it. Now, I don't know, Aussie guys, you might remember old Victor 18s. Well, that's what it was. And if I'd have kept hold of that mower and restored it, that would be worth some real money back nowadays. But anyway, so I put it all back together. I still ended up with a whole heap of washers and fibre washers and things like that. I had no idea where they went. But anyway, I hooked up a little fuel tank to it. We poured a bit of fuel into the carburetor and wrapped a rope around the pulley and gave it a yank, and away it went. Well, I was absolutely stoked over that. So the future for me was already set in concrete from that day on. I thought, I can do anything now. By the time I got to 12, I had a motor car. I bought an old car which we used to take down the paddock. We used to bash it through the paddock along some little tracks and trails that were around there. And it was a 1959 Renault C4, 890 cc's, I think it was, if I remember correctly. Rear engine, rear drive, and yeah, so I kept maintaining that and fiddling around with it, and got to understand it, obviously through this book, which I was still reading at that stage, and yeah, and I eventually I cut the roof off that with a chisel and a hacksaw, and because it had suicide doors and it was a monocoque setup, consequently when you went over a bump, the doors would open up and the thing would just fold in half. So I learnt my first failure there, and I found another burnt out shell, which was just up the road from my parents' place. Which is not far from here actually, and me and a couple of buddies pushed it down the hill, down to my mum's, round the back. I pulled the engine, the gearbox, all the drive line and all the stuff out of it, and I transferred it over to the other body shell, and I used to bash that one around the paddock, and so that's pretty much how it all started for me. And from there on in, well, you know, I've made a living out of motor mechanics. Excuse me, I'm just having a beer. I made a living out of motor mechanics, and yeah, so cars have always been in my life. As I say, my dad was crap at it. He used to take me along to his buddies' places, who would repair his car for him. There was one guy I remember did a set of rings and bearings in his car for him because it was a smoker, and yeah, I was there watching. I'm always getting pushed to the side, and don't get in the way. But I was only a little guy back then. I was probably about 6 or 7, maybe 6, something like that. And yeah, it's all gone on from there. It's all blossomed on from there. So, and my first job that I got was for a guy that used to be the mechanic when we came to the address where I really did my growing up. When we moved to Sydney when I was I think 3 years of age, but we moved out to Western Sydney when I was about 5 or something like that. Dad got a job in the local area, and consequently we moved out here. And he found a mechanic that would look after his car for him, and Peter Brayshaw was his name. He was called the Likeable Rogue because he used to, when he used to do things that were, well, we frown at him, I suppose, nowadays, but he showed me a lot of things. He showed me lots of shortcuts, lots to do with motor cars. So there we were, and when I left school at 16 years of age in what was called fourth form back in the day, or it's year 10 now, I think they call it. I got on my push bike. I went down and I saw this Peter Brayshaw and asked him for a job, and he said, "No, sorry, kid. Haven't got any places for you. I've got a young apprentice on now." And then he said, "Hang on a second," the phone rang or something, if I can't remember what. And there was this apprentice, and he had a surface grinding. He was surface grinding a 6-cylinder Holden cylinder head, wiping it across the tool, boom, 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 across the stone, back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And Peter came out to him and said, "Listen, Pete," he said, "listen to the kid." He said, "Why is it taking you so long to surface grind that cylinder head?" He said, "You must have taken a half an inch off that head by now." Anyway, the kid's kicked it up on its end, and I said, "He's forgotten to take the head gasket off it." Well, straight away, that guy got the flick, I got hired. And I worked for him for about 3 years. Showed me lots and lots and lots and lots of things on different motor cars. And by the time I was 20, I was doing engine rebuilds. I was with no formal training. I was doing engine rebuilds. I was doing transmission rebuilds. Now, well, fair enough, the transmissions were power glides and Borg Warner 35s and 727 torque flight gearboxes. Pretty simple stuff back in the day. So, front ends, wheel alignments, you name it, I was doing them. I was doing all that stuff. And time came that I thought, well, I better get myself a ticket, a mechanic's license, so a trades ticket. And so at 20 years of age, I went to the technical college and I booked myself in. Peter was happy enough to pay me for the day, for the wage, for the day, to go to technical college once a week. A 4-year course, 3 of which was a tech and one which was a practical, but I've already done the practical. And as you've probably seen in some of my comments, I have a bit of a sense of humour. Sometimes it's a bit dry. I try and be funny. Sometimes I can be. I really try not to hurt anyone's feelings and stuff like that. Oh, you know, I try and make a joke probably everywhere it goes. I think trying to have a good sense of humour and looking at things at the lighter side of things rather than the drama is always better. Anyway, so day one at the TAFE at the technical college, and I'm making jokes to the kids. I'm the class clown, and the teacher's saying things. Now, all these other guys are 16, 17, never held a spanner in their hand, never checked an oil level with a dipstick, wouldn't know where to start from. So they're all starting from scratch. And as I said, I'm already doing rebuilds on cars. I've had engines out, gearboxes out, rebuilt all that sort of stuff. And I got actually told to wait out in the 2 hours into the first half of the day, and I was asked to go and stand out in the hallway so that I didn't disrupt everyone else. Real good start. So then, second half of the day, practical lesson. They took us into the practical room, and it's all full of tools and lathes and all sorts of machinery there. And and our job was to, he gave us a plan, he gave us a piece of metal, it was a piece of square stock, which was probably, I don't know, that long, something like that, by, you know, half-inch square or something like that. And we were given a plan and told all the tools we were supposed to use, and this project was to last us for a month to make a main jet key for a Stromberg carburetor. Now, if you know a Stromberg carburetor, they got a little screw at the bottom of the carburetor. I don't think I even have one in here, but a Stromberg carburetor, screw at the bottom, pull the screw out, and you can see the main jet, and you have a main jet key that undoes that jet. Well, probably about an hour or so into the class, I came up to him with my sample of the main jet key finished. And he looked at me and he got his micrometer out and he measured it up and he said, that is a 1/1000th of an inch too small in the shaft, in the actual shaft area where it goes up into the carburetor. Go and make another one. Okay. So I went into and got another piece of metal, and I did the same thing, turned it down on the lathe, ran it through the knurling machine, shaped it up with the shaper, cut the hole in the end of it, took it back to him, and I said, there you go, there's another one. He said, is this one right? And I said, well, if it's not, you can fucking make your own. And with that, I was told to leave and never go back. And I can actually show you the offending tool, and there it is right there, the main jet key. That's for the screw. You put a screwdriver or a drift or something in there, you can turn it, cut all that out. That's the shape of the main jet. Turned it down, that's where it was too narrow across there. But so back to Peter I went, and from there on in I sort of moved about and all around, worked for him for about 5 years and worked for a couple of car yards for a number of years and bounced around to all different places, used cars, a lot of used cars. The best place to learn about motor cars and all types of motor cars is in used cars, man. You learn at someone else's expense. You make some mistakes, but you certainly learn. But anyway, so here I am, almost 56 years later. I'm almost 56 in a week, and I made my profession out of it, and so there we go. That's how I started off getting into cars. So hope you found that interesting. And now, where would I live? Nowhere else but here. Seriously. Australia is so easy, although at the moment, times change, and so it does everywhere else around the world. But I'd rather live here than anywhere else. I grew up, when I say grew up, from 5 years of age till now in this particular area, or 10-kilometre radius around it. So I've always been around. My parents always lived there. I was always a hop, step and a jump away from the parents' place, and I knew everybody in the area, and it was an easy way to live. Not only that, about 2 hours to the west is Mount Panorama, best racetrack in the world. 15 minutes away from here, and that's a true 15-minute drive, the drag strip. And even though the drag strip wasn't there back in the day, it was at Castlereagh back in my days when I started driving. Drag racing. All my cars have always had multiple carburetors and cylinder heads with high compression, and you know how it is. We used to run them on methanol and all sorts of stuff back in the day, but As far as living anywhere else, no. I may go to Western Australia, possibly, if I was to ever go anywhere else. I'll show you here. Here's my thing. Okay, a lot of you people have heard of Sydney. Sydney's about there, and I live about that corner where the little red square is from Sydney. That's Bondi and all that sort of stuff in there. So, you know, it's a 40-minute drive. You know, maybe an hour if the traffic's a lot. Been there, seen the sun rising many times. If I was to ever live anywhere else, probably over here in Perth. If there was anything else. Good drag strip, exactly the same as the one that's at Eastern Creek, only reversed around. But I think to see the sunset might be something different, you know, so see the sunset over the ocean as opposed to see it sunrise over the ocean. So that's about the story of me, how I got into cars, why I was into cars, and where I live and why I'd stay here. Temperature gets warm. We're going to have it up in the you know, well into the 30s this week. 39 I think tomorrow. Tuesday. But hey, you know, we don't get snow. The coldest it gets here, probably 3 degrees Celsius. That's the coldest, and it gets up to like 10 or 12 degrees during the day. So, lucky country? Yeah, I think so. Happy to live here? Certainly. The other thing was, yeah, how did I get in the garage gang? Well, always been into cars, as you already realised. I like my radio control cars, and I used to have a channel, and it was called ZIGgassedUP, and that was with that was before I had cable internet. I had dial-up, and when I went to cable, it wouldn't let me take the ZIGgassedUP channel name with me, so I had to change it to ZIGgassedUP. And that's about actually we're coming up to 5 years, I think, in May of this year. And I used to scout around, look and see what other people were doing, and I came across a fella named Pete, the Southwest Rod and Custom, and I made comments on his channel. And I made a phone call to him, because he was always saying, you know, you want to have a talk about anything, ring up. So I ring him up. Talked to him for 2 hours. Cost me $400. Consequently, that's why I got Skype, and I used to talk to Pete quite a bit, and I haven't spoken to him for a long time. But we send messages through YouTube quite a bit, so that's all good. And I was subscribed to a lot of guys that were doing race cars. Yeah, I guess it all sort of bloomed from there until one time I got a message from a guy named VW Darren, going back just a little bit, and he said to me, I've seen your stuff through Pete's channel, and I'd wondered why I'd never subscribed to you, but I have now. And so I returned the favour. I saw Darren's channel. I had a look at Darren's channel, and I can't remember exactly how many videos into it that he was building an FE Ford engine, and I watched him. I spotted he put a head gasket on backwards on the left-hand bank, if I remember correctly. I messaged him that message. And I did it really politely too, by the way. And Darren, if you're there, how you going, bud? I did it politely. I said because I didn't want to make it out that I was a smart ass or anything. Okay, so you got to have some tact. So I said to Darren, look, I don't know too much about these V8 Ford things. I'm not a Ford guy. I don't know how those ones work. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you've installed that head gasket backwards. he and Andrea went to lunch. He thought about it and thought about it and thought about it, and he couldn't help himself. He had to go back and check it. Sure enough, there it was. And I think me and Darren have been sort of pretty good buddies on YouTube since then. Anyway, so I guess and when it comes to the garage gang, I think I was just drafted into it because I was part of the scene. I was being a participant. I was commenting. I was watching, suggesting, and generally just helping people out if they had a problem with their motor cars, as far as the mechanical side of things go. Because as far as bodywork's concerned, I've only picked up what I've picked up in my travels and through the tube. So that's pretty much the story about me, where I live, and how I got involved in the garage gang. Mind you, I'm quite happy to be a part of the garage gang. It's a great group of guys. Sure, there's some dickheads out there that think they know better than the guys that do know, but hey, we don't all know everything. So that's my story anyway, and I certainly don't know everything, but I'm always willing to learn. So with that, I think we're about 33 degrees. I'm out in old cramped corner here, and yeah, I think that's about it for me. I'll tell you what I was wondering. I was wondering what sort of, I look at people's key rings, especially when you see people's cars, or you go over to a car and someone's brought their car in for a service or whatever, and you have a look what's on their key rings, and it kind of almost gives you an insight into that sort of person when you see what's on their key rings. Now, that's my key ring right there. Yeah, this was a promotion when Monotalk first came out, and that's my key ring. I've had that since about 1985, I think, or 83, somewhere around there. So let's have a look what you got for a key ring. Yeah, head gasket. That's mine. You can probably guess why. So anyways, to you all out there, have a good one, and we'll catch up to the next time. Take care. Cheers. Bye bye.